In the last video, I talked all about data attributes, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can traverse the DOM from one element to another. So to get started here, I have a pretty simple HTML structure where I have a div called grandparent, which has the text grandparent in it, and it has two other divs inside of it. This first one has the text parent1, and inside of that, we have two children, and then finally we have parent2 down here. And I have a small amount of styling over here just so we can get this nice structure over here. We have our grandparent, our parent1, which has its children, and then parent2, both inside the grandparent. And what we're going to do is we're going to select just this grandparent element, and we're going to be able to get to any of these other elements with ease. So let me show you how to do that. First, we're going to select our grandparent. And if you remember over here, we gave it an ID of grand-parent. So we can just say document.query selector. And we're just going to do the pound symbol of grandparent. This is how you select an element based on its ID. And just to make sure this is working, let's just take our grandparent and we're going to change the style and we're going to change the color to be equal to red. So if we save, you can see our text has changed to red for everything inside of here. I just want to go a little bit further in our styles. We're going to say div color is going to be black. Because essentially what's happening is this color red is inheriting down to all the children. This is just preventing that. So now whatever we change the color to, only the individual element you select is going to have that color. So in our case, our grandparent selected, it has a color of red. So how would we get the parents, these children of the grandparent? Well, to do that, we can just say grandparent.children. This is going to give us the children element. Let's just console.log this out. And if we save, you can see we get an HTML collection. And if you see inside here, we have div1 and div2, which are parent1 and our parent2. And what we can do is take that a step further. If we want to get the first element, for example, our first parent, we just use the array notation to get the first element. And we're going to change the style and the color to be equal to red. Let's get rid of this console log. We don't need that anymore. Get rid of this color red here. And now what happens is you can see we changed our parent1 color to red because we're selecting the very first parent. So let's just set this to a variable. Const parent1 is equal to this. And then we can say down here, parent1, and we can change the style and color to red. So as you can see, we now have parent1 and we have grandparent. Well, to get parent2, we could just copy this down, get the second indexed element and say parent2, and that's going to work just fine. And down here, we could change this to say parent2.style.color red, and now we have a red parent2. That would work, but I mean, that's kind of too easy. What I want to do is I want to go from parent1 to parent2. And here what we can do is just say parent1.next element sibling. And it's important that we use element sibling here because we want to get the next element and not just the next random thing, which in our case may be some like text or spacing. So we want the next element sibling. We could also do previous element sibling if we wanted to get the previous element, but in our case, we want the next element sibling. Now, when we save this, you can see it still selects parent2, which is why it's got that red color, and it's just going to the next sibling of parent1, which in our case is our parent2 down here. So now let's get the actual children. We'll say const child1 is equal to here, our parent1.children, and we want to get the very first one just like this. And then what we can do is we can say const child2 is equal to parent1.children of 1, just like that. And now we can say child1.style color is red. That works fine. And we can say child2, and that one is turned red. But what happens if we want to get a parent from a child element? So instead, let's reverse this. Let's get rid of the ID on grandparent, and we're going to put our ID on child1. So we'll say ID child1. And inside of here, we're going to say const child1 is equal to document.query selector of the ID child1. So if we save both of these, now we're selecting our first child. We can just change its text to red. .style.color equals red. There we go. Now we only have a child. We have no selectors for any of these parents, so how are we going to get to them? Well, it's actually fairly straightforward. We can just say child1.parent, and we want to get here the parent element, and this is going to give us the parent of child1, which in our case, we say const parent1 is equal to this, and we change parent1.style.color to equal red. Save this real quick. You'll see we've changed the text of parent1 to red. We can take this a step further, and get the grandparent by just saying parent1 dot parent element. And now we can change the grandparent's style dot color to red. And as you can see, again, that works just fine. So in order to traverse the DOM, we have a bunch of different elements. We have children, which gives us all of the children of an element. For example, here, parent1 dot children, just like this. We have next element sibling, we have previous element sibling, and we have parent element. So this allows us to go up, down, and sideways inside of our DOM, which allows us to essentially see any element that we want. There is actually one way that we can take this a step further though. What happens if we wanted to jump directly from a child to one of its parents, but not necessarily its direct parent? Let's say we wanted to go all the way to the grandparent. We're just going to give this a class of grandparent, for example. And we want to go directly from child 1 straight to the grandparent without jumping through all the parents, because how do we know how many parents this is going to have or how many children? Maybe it'll be 10 parents high, maybe it'll be 1 parent high. We just want to get to an element with the class grandparent that is a parent of child 1. Well, that's actually really easy to do. So we have child 1, and we want to go straight to grandparent. What we can do is we can say child1 dot closest. What closest does is it works very similar to query selector, except for instead of selecting elements that are children, what it does is selects elements that are a parent. So we can say dot grandparent like this, and when we save, you'll notice we still get that red color. If we were to come in here, change it to green, for example, we'll get a green parent. So we're able to actually select any parent. It doesn't matter how far away it is, just by giving it a class. And we can do this with a class, with an ID, any selector you want. So this closest method, what it does is it looks at all of the parents of the element you're currently on and finds the very first one that matches whatever selector you put inside of here. So if we were to just put a selector inside of here that said red, and we gave this a class of red, and we gave the parent a class of red, save this, make sure we just come over here, go to our console, and change this to red, you'll notice that parent1 is the one that turns red. And the reason for that is because closest just selects the closest one, the closest parent, the first parent. So this is how we can select any parent, no matter how far away it is, whichever one's the first one that matches this selector. Now let's say that we wanted to do this a little bit different. Let's say that we have this is going to have an ID, and we're going to give it an ID of grandparent, just like that. And now what we want to do and come here is select grandparent, delete all this code down here, and this is based on the ID grandparent. So now we have the grandparent, and we want to get a child, but we don't want to necessarily get the first child or the first set of children. We want to get just one of the children that is inside of it, or a group of children inside of it. For example, let's say we want to get all of these, we're going to give a class of child. So we want to get these children that have this class of child. What we can do is we can just say const children is equal to grandparent.querySelector all, and we want to get all the ones that have the class of child. And we could just loop through these. So let's say children.forEach child, child.style, style.color equals red. And as you can see, we styled both these children as red. So you'll notice this query selector all as well as just normal query selector if we wanted to just get one thing. So if we wanted to get the parent, which has a class of red, we could say just query selector on red. And now we can say parent.style.color. And we're just going to change this one to green. And now you can see we have that green parent. So we can use query selector all of those we can use on any element, because document is just like any other element, like grandparent, parent, children. All of these are just elements, and you can use these query selector all on them. And what it'll do is it'll take the element you're on, in our case, our grandparent, and it'll look at all of the children, no matter how deeply nested they are, and it'll find anything that matches this selector for query selector all. Or if we do just normal query selector, it'll find the first thing that matches it, just like if we were to do document.querySelector. It works exactly the same, but instead of looking at it from the document, it looks at it from the actual element that we're on, in our case, the grandparent. And that right there is everything you need to know about traversing through the DOM, up, down, left, right, it does not matter. In the next video, we're going to build out our very first project, which is creating a simple to-do list application, so I can't wait to see you in that video.